supposed to be. Might be as elusive as it's close to me. So guys, this is my pattern. It's folded into two. Okay, welcome to my channel. So it's folded into two, and this is the folded part. Now to begin off, I'll first draw in my starting point like this. Now, having my starting point here in place, I'm now going to draw a straight line on this side, this other side, a straight line down. The next thing I'm doing, I'm marking my vertical measurements. So the very first measurement I'm marking is my armhole depth, which is 9 from the shoulder. So that's my armhole depth. I'll be joining it in dotted. Now this dotted line that we've just created is going to become my chest line. The next measurement I'm taking from the starting point is my shoulder to bust measurement. Okay, so mine is 10. I'll just join this in a straight line again to form my bust point. Next point I'm marking is my shoulder to waist, then I'm joining it with a straight line. And the very last point I'm marking right here is my full length, the full length of my blazer. So I'm working with 24. I'll just mark that, then join it with a straight line again, of course. Yeah, so that will become my hem line or my hip line. Now, since we are done with the vertical measurements, I'm going to transform my horizontal measurements. So right here I'm just marking my neck width and which is 3 inches, and the neck depth, which is 1.5 inch. I'm then connecting the points to get my back neckline like that. Now marking in my shoulder measurement divided by 2 plus half an inch, which gives me 8. Okay, and from that point I'm going down 1 inch, then I'm connecting that point to my shoulder to form my shoulder slant. Yeah, then I'll duplicate the 8 inches that I marked up there. I'm duplicating that on my chest line. Then I'll be connecting this to the shoulder slant like that. Now I'm squaring out this line from this point like this. Yeah. The next thing we are going to do is to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. Okay, so I'm marking my bust circumference divided by 4 on my chest line. Then I'm adding 1.5 inch. Now I'm going to divide this line into 2. So after dividing into 2, I have my midpoint right there. Now I'm just connecting my midpoint to this point like this. Let me do this with a pencil first, then I'll go in with my mark pen just to avoid spoiling this, because I cannot bear starting this thing again. Now that one becomes my back armhole. Just ignore the red armhole because it's the front armhole. I'll show you how to go about it on the front pattern. Now right here I'm just marking my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2, which is 4. So I'm just marking the 4 on my bust point, waistline, and on my hemline. Okay, so on my waistline I'm going out half an inch on both sides. Then from my hemline I'm stepping up 2 inches, and I'm just connecting these points like this from the bust point and from the point I stepped up 2 inches from the hemline to form my dart like this. Now on my waistline I'm going to mark my waist circumference divided by 4 plus 1 inch that the dart will be taking in plus 1.5 inch allowance. And on my hemline I'm marking my hip circumference divided by 4 plus 1.5 inch allowance. Then I'm just connecting the outer points like so. Good job. Now from this point I'm going to go up 1 inch because I want my blazer to have shape, okay, on the side. Then I'm just connecting this to where my dart leg is. I'm just joining it to that point to the curve like so, like that. Now you see this part I'm dividing it by 2, then I'm connecting the midpoint to my bust point. like that, because my back needs to have a shoulder dart for it to look more beautiful. Now from my waistline I've gone in 1/2 inch because our backs are not entirely straight, so you need to do this shaping on your back pattern or on your garment for it to look more better. Now I'm getting rid of the straight one because our backs are not straight, so we are kind of bending, so that's why I'm getting rid of that. Now I'm going to add allowance on my shoulder area and on my back seam and the hemline. The only part I'm not going to add allowance is on my side seam because I already did that while I was drafting, so I'm just going to do that, then that will be it. And for the allowance, it's 1/2 inch on the shoulder and on the back seam, but on the hemline I'm marking 1 inch. I'm marking in 1 inch allowance. Okay, yeah, so that is it. Now I'm just going to mark my center back line. Yeah, so this one becomes my center back line, not the straight one, so you remember. Then I'm just writing in my pattern instructions. This is the side back, the center back, because I'll be slashing through the dart area when we will be sewing this particular blazer. Then I'm just indicating the grain on which I'm supposed to be cutting the blazer. Okay, so that's basically it, and the number of pieces that I'll be cutting, just not to confuse. So that's basically it for the back blazer pattern. I think we are done with the back. Yeah, so what I want to do is to separate this part. So you remember when we started drafting, I told you this part is on fold. Now I'm just slashing it through to separate, to remove this my back piece, this one. So I'm taking it out to work now to work on the front one. Okay, now moving on to the front pattern, this is what we have. Now I'm going to mark 5 inches from that corner, so I'm marking in 5 inches, then I'll draw a straight line here. This will work as my starting point, it will serve as my starting point. Okay, so I'm just connecting this with a straight line. Now my people, this one becomes the center front line, so I'll start from this line to mark in my points. So I'm right here, I'm just drawing my starting point. Haya, from the starting point, just like we did on the front, I'm marking down my chest line, then I connected it in dotted. Okay, then I'm going to mark down my bust point, waistline and the hemline, then I'll join the lines just like I did on the front, like this. Okay, so just kindly note that I'm marking these points from this point, this center front line. Then I'm marking my neck width, which is 3 inches, and my neck depth, which is 3 inches also, and I'll just be connecting that with a curve to form my front neckline. Right here I'm marking in my shoulder divided by 2 plus 1/2 inch, which was 8 inches. You remember that? Yeah, 8 inches. So then stepping down 1 inch to form my shoulder slant, and I'm connecting it to the edge of my neckline like so. Then I'm duplicating the 8 inch on my chest line, and I'll be connecting that on my shoulder slant like that. Then I'm squaring out this line. Yeah, yes. Now I'll be getting the midpoint of this line, and from that midpoint I'm going in 1/2 inch, and I'm connecting that to my shoulder slant. Okay, now right here I'm marking my bust circumference divided by 4 plus 1.5 inch allowance. Then I'll be joining this point to I'll be joining the points that you see me joining. Okay, yeah, like that, to form my front armhole. Good job. Now I'm just marking the 4 inches. You remember the 4 inches? I'm marking that on my bust point, waistline and hip hemline or hip line, and I'm just connecting that in a straight line. Then on my waistline, I'm going out 1/2 inch on both sides. From my bust point, I'm stepping down 1 inch. From the hemline, I'm stepping up 2 inches. Then I'll be joining all the dart legs to form my dart, like so. Okay, so right here I'm marking in my waist circumference divided by 4 plus 1 inch that the dart will be taking in, plus 1.5 inch allowance. On my hemline, I'm marking my hip circumference divided by 4 plus 1.5 inch allowance. Then I'll just be joining the outer points like that. Okay, and on this side I'm going to go up 1 inch because I did that on my back, so I have to do it on my front also. So I'm going up 1 inch just to give my blazer this kind of shape that will make my blazer to look good, to look beautiful, because of course you want your blazer to look fine. Yeah, you want your blazer to look nice. So the next thing you want to do is to add in your button allowance. Yeah, so I'm adding in 1 inch on the center front line. I'm going out 1 inch from my center front line. Okay, so this one will become my button allowance. Yeah, so I don't know why I was writing in zip allowance. I think my head was not working at that time, but it's a button allowance, not a zip allowance. Then this section, this portion of the shoulder right here, I'm dividing it by 2, then I'm connecting it to the bust point. Okay, because we want our blazer to have a shoulder dart. Sawa. Now on this part, I'm going to extend my pattern because my pattern is small, and we are working on a shawl collar jacket. So this part I'm going to extend it up by gluing in another pattern like this, because I need my pattern to be long enough. So if your pattern is long enough, you can skip this procedure. Yeah, you can skip this part of adding in another paper. Now I'm just extending my waistline to my button allowance. Then I'm going to join it. Okay, I'll join it to this point like this. I'm sure you can see how I've extended this line, this waistline, how I've drawn this line straight across my neck width. Okay, now you see this, measure your neck width, the width you used on your back neckline. See, it was 3 inches. Now you're going to mark that from the shoulder up on this line. See guys, you can just see this thing is self-explanatory. Yeah, so I marked the 3 inches up from the shoulder point. Then this line now, this line that I've just created, I'm going to square it across. And while squaring it across, make sure this point is at 90-degree angle. You're 90. Okay, that thing in the middle, is it 90-degree? Okay, what I'm just trying to mean is it's supposed to be straight, not bending. Then from that point, I've gone in 1/2 inch, and I'll be joining that on my shoulder slant with a curve, like how I'm doing right here. So I'm just joining it with a curve, with a slant line, with a curve, with a curve like so. Then for my neck width, I'll be working with 3.3 inches. I marked 3 inches, but I later changed my mind and decided to work with 3.5. Okay, so for my neck width, I'm going to work with 3.5. So I'm just marking my 3.5 right like that. Then I'll just be drawing in the shape that I want my shawl collar to have. Now the next thing you want to do, I want to give my blazer a little shape on the front area. So I'm just going to curve in this front like so. I don't want it to have this corner, so I'm just going to create a curve, a slant curve on this part like that. just to make sure my blazer is not just that plain. And you know, you are a baby girl and you want your you want to have class in your garment. Now I'm just writing in the name of this pattern as if I don't know, front shawl blazer pattern, because that's the pattern that we've just drafted. Then I'm adding in my grain lines on which I'm supposed to be cutting this particular pattern. Then I'll go ahead and add in my allowance. Okay, so I'll add in my allowance except for the side seam, because I already did that when I was drafting this jacket. Now for the bottom I used 1 inch, but on the front, on the center front and on the shoulder I worked with 1/2 inch. Okay, so that's it for this particular pattern, the front pattern. That's basically it. I'll slash it guys with you in the sewing video. So bye for now, see you in the sewing version of this particular blazer.